Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Engagement Designer demo series. In the previous episode, we talked about the Instances tab of the Administration Console, and how you can look at all the different instances that are currently running, completed, or errored out within the Engagement Designer platform here. In this episode, we're going to go through the Event Catalog tab. In the Event Catalog tab, we list all of the events that are defined either by the system with included events on the Avaya Engagement Designer platform, or by ones that you define, because you can also create your own special events within the event catalog here. Events are listed within the event catalog, but are actually living on the Avaya Engagement Designer event bus. The event bus is a hosting interaction between the external world and the internal Engagement Designer world. The event bus can be called through web-based RESTful services, or can be called internally through the Engagement Designer using tasks within the Engagement Designer development tool. Without getting too sophisticated, it's just important to know that the eventing bus is what lets Breeze know when to run workflows at specific times. In the Event Catalog tab here, we can see there's event families, event types, and event versions. Event families are a host of event types, and event types can be defined by each event version. If you were to call a specific event family, it would call all the event types underneath that family. If you were to call a specific event family, event type, and event version, you will call that specific listed event. So event families can be called to call off multiple event types, or you can call specifically to an event family, event type, and event version. This kind of gives like a hierarchical way of calling off different events. For this example, we're going to stick to calling specifically event family, event type, event version. Now, without getting too confusing, it's important to know how Json coding works and how Json key value pairs work. If you're unfamiliar with how to use Json in a Json coding, I recommend going to www.tutorialspoint.com/json. I'll list the URL within the video here. But to get started, it's important to know how the JSON series works, because basically events are running through a JSON schema type. This means that the JSON format is what we're going to use, and the RESTful services is going to be the call to these JSON schemas, and that's how we're going to call an event and tell an event to start with Engagement Designer. As an example here, I have listed all of the different events that I've created using my name and then what part of the family and type and version they are part of. I'm showing those by doing a search function here based on the keyword of my name in order to hide some of the more sensitive ones listed in this lab. Like the other tabs, you can also refresh the page and refresh this tab listing off the different events. You can also hide and show each of the columns within this tab by checking and unchecking these checkboxes here. This is very similar compared to all the other tabs that we've gone over before. You can also sort based on clicking the titles within the columns here by sorting either ascending or descending, of the spelling of each event. To create a new event, you can click on the Create button, and this will open a new window within the Administration Console here. You'll see that I need to define the event family, the event type, and the event version, as well as the schema that goes along with this event. The family text box here will be the exact technical name in the JSON key value pair. So if I were to define event family Nathan, that will be the technical name for my key value pair in my JSON coding if I were to call this event. The family display name is the name that actually appears within the Engagement Designer development tool, which we will go over later. Just for simplistic sake, I will copy and paste the event family name that I used in order to not cause some confusion. But you can think of this as, if you have a complex family name, in order for technical details, you may want a simpler name within the Engagement Designer development tool in order to make things look more simplistic and give a better naming schema to things within the Engagement Designer tool. The event type will be listed as such as the event family. It'll be listed the same, where you'll have the event type technical name. We'll go event type. And then the display name works the same way as the event family. I'll just copy and paste to use the same. The versioning is done based on your versioning control. So in this lab, we use 1.0 series or number.number series. For simplistic sake here, I'm going to use 1.0 and keep with the schema. And then what I do to keep the schema name accurate is I like to use the schema name as the family name dash schema. That keeps things similar within the lab in order to not cause confusion for me later when I run down the events later down the road. The schema name is defined, and then once you have a defining schema name, you need to open the Json schema editor. This will open a window that allows you to use a simple GUI in order to create a key value pair setup in JSON format. So I can see it open another window on top where it'll ask for a title name of the object that is going to host this JSON object here. So the title name I always like to keep the same, and I always put it as lowercase e event and capital B body. That will be the name of my object within the payload of this schema type. And so you can see now by clicking enter, I have my object's now name as event body. In my example before, I only had one object within my, actually I should say one variable within my object, and I called it text. So I have here my event body object. Below it there's a green plus button that allows me to add objects within it, and I can add things like strings, numbers, booleans, even objects within objects in order to create a sort of multi-tiered object. And add multiple, if you know sorts of coding, add multiple just means an array. So I can have an array of strings, an array of numbers, an array of booleans, or an array of objects. To get even super sophisticated, an array of objects would be a very complex style. But for simplistic sake here, I'm just going to have add string, which will create that new string object within my event body container here. Instead of calling it new string, just like before, I'm going to call it text. Capital T, text, and then hit enter. That means the key to my object here is going to be called text, and it is of type string in my JSON object. Key is known as text, type string. If you don't understand JSON, this might be a little confusing to you, but it's important to know. I can simply then click OK, and I can see it automatically populated my schema window here. And my schema window here is the payload of the entirety of this event family type and body. I can see there's the title, event body, the type of it is object, the properties within that event body or that event body container is my one object I like to call text, which is the key, and then the type is string. So that means my event here will run anytime somebody calls to the eventing bus, event family Nathan, event type Nathan, version 1, title event body, and my payload. To save it, I'll simply click OK. And then I can see on simple refresh, I have my new event here. A simple way to run this is to go through Postman. In a later episode, I will go through examples of how to use Postman. Postman is a simple Windows or Mac application that you can use to run post calls. Post is just a simple version of REST calls without getting too complex. And that's a way we can actually run this externally from outside the lab. We can actually run this event right here. But just as an example, I just wanted to create an event to show how an event can get created. If I decide later that I want to change the event, I can click on the edit button. And this will open that same style of window, but you'll notice that event family, event type, and version are grayed out. Once you create an event within the event catalog here, you cannot change the technical name of the event family, type, or version. You can, however, change the engagement designer display name to something else if you'd like. This is, as you'll remember, this is the name that shows up with the engagement designer tool when you click and select the drop downs for this specific event, which we will go over later. Lastly, you're able to then delete any event that's selected, or even just view a specific event. I find that the view button is very helpful for when you forget exactly what is going along with the schema of a type of event. This gives you a nice overview exactly what that schema is for later use. If you want to export events, you can actually use the export button here. And this will then take all of the events within this lab or within your environment and export them to a JSON style format tool, which you can then import those events into a different lab or another system. As you can see here, you can import the events to another system. I'm not going to do that today, but just as an example, I'm showing that you can export all of your events from one system to the other, which is very helpful when you have multiple Breeze systems. You can also likewise import events into a system. You can import events into your system from another one using the same style JSON format file, which then you have exported from another system and then imported into this system. Cancel that. So that's very quickly going through what the events are and do, and how to quickly then create an event of your own. Just as an example, I like to think of events as any sort of key value pair that runs through a REST call and uses the JSON as a payload. That may be a little complex for some people, but if you understand JSON, that's pretty easy to understand. Like I said, I highly recommend going through www.tutorialspoint.com/JSON, and I'll list the HTML link within this video here as well. But that's a quick overview of going over the event catalog and how you can create events that then call to workflows within your administration console here. In the next episode, we're going to go over the Bundles tab to look at how we can exactly import and export snap-ins within our Engagement Designer in order to enhance our Engagement Designer's functionality.